This is Jordan Butler, host of Head Over Heels. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Baxter Colburn, host of the Verse of the Day podcast on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Verse of the Day. In Verse of the Day, we talk about practical examples on how each verse in the Bible can be applied to our daily lives and draw us a little bit closer to all that God has to offer. A new show comes out every single day, so don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Verse of the Day podcast. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Throughout history, the course of sports has been shaped by one thing: the fans.
From the moments you never dreamed of
Bobby Womack has saved the USA's life in this World Cup. Paul, the runner, loose ball, it's good. Gonzaga, the flipper still fits.
To the moments that still give you nightmares.
Behind the bag, it gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it. He's in. Patriots win the Super Bowl. Brady has his fifth.
Through the good and the bad, fans have helped change the games we watch and the players we love.
They may not be the most logical people,
You are a factory of sadness. I'll see you Sunday.
But they know their teams better than anybody.
They'll blow in the ninth.
you may not always see them, but you know where to find them.
After all, there's nothing quite like the view from the cheap seats.
Broadcasting as part of the Public House Media Network.
Grab a chair and enjoy all there is in
The cheap seats.
Oh, that's right. Welcome once again inside the cheap seats this Monday, February 26th. Christian Heimall along with Jon Lauder here back with you guys once again. Thank you so much, everybody, for making our first week of shows such a tremendous week as well. We really appreciate all the support we got over the first three shows that we did. Of course, Jon and myself here on Mondays, Jeff and Max on Wednesdays, and Baxter and Matt on Fridays. Really appreciate everything you guys gave to us, and we look forward to many more weeks with you guys all up here where the only real option about getting down is, well, parachutes. So, Jon, how are you, bud?
I'm fine. I mean, as long as they don't find out that we've been, getting impermissible benefits, we should be good to go.
Oh, those words. So there are two phrases. There are two phrases in collegiate sports that drive me up a wall, and we're going to talk about both here today. We're going to get to our poll question for the day as well. We also put up a poll question on our Facebook page. By the way, check it out, the Cheap Seats Sports Podcast. Like the page. Interact with us there. You can. It's a great way to get involved with the show each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here on Public House Media. But there are two phrases, Jon, that just blow my mind in college sports, and they're used a lot. Impermissible benefits is the first one, and then the second one, plausible deniability. Those are the just ridiculous phrases that have become now commonplace, unfortunately, when we discuss college sports. And, of course, we are talking about the bombshell report on Friday, Yahoo Sports, that links over 25 college basketball players, some of them current basketball players, more than 20 Division I programs, all with this agent, Andy Miller, and his former agency, ASM Sports, for paying players, whether it be for meals, which are considered an impermissible benefit, whether it be actual loans like $73,000 given to the now Dallas Mavericks, Dennis Smith Jr., when he played at North Carolina. Jon, we knew this all in September. The start of the season was a black eye because of what we heard from this original FBI report, 10 people being arrested. But since then, it has only gotten worse for college basketball.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, Christian, this is just one agency. One guy, pretty much, one agency. So you can only imagine where this is headed. But to be honest with you, no one, a rock or you don't understand college sports should be surprised by this. I'm not surprised by it. I know you're not surprised by it. Quite frankly, and I think this is going to become a problem as well, I don't think the NCAA is surprised by it. I think that Mark Emmert, who has proven himself to be a buffoon, to call him a nice word, probably knew this was coming. I refuse to believe he didn't. This is what college sports is at the highest levels and the biggest sports. This is what college football and college basketball is. If you want the best guys, you've got to shell out money. And I love how the NCAA has built up one of the largest for-profit companies in sports under this ridiculous guise of amateurism. It bothers me to no end. It's not amateurism. It hasn't been.
Not.
It hasn't been, and it's not.
It's a for-profit business, basically, and it's the only for-profit business where the employees, the main employees, don't get paid in collegiate sports, whether it's basketball or football. Some schools I know will argue that they don't really make. I mean, a lot of mid-major schools. You and I both come from a mid-major school. We've worked for mid-major schools, and we know that. I shouldn't say this. We don't know, and I hate even thinking that right now because of how much you and I love the mid-majors. But based off some of those names, John, Chaz Williams, who committed to Hofstra with you and I were students there. Chaz Williams is listed on this thing. Now, whether that means it was when it was going to Hofstra, when he was transferring to UMass after Tom Pecora left for Fordham, who knows? But the fact that his name is on there is what really scares me because it's not just the Kansases, the Dukes, North Carolinas, Michigan States, Arizonas. It's not just them. It could be anybody from, it could be anybody from UCLA all the way down to Fairleigh Dickinson University. Not that we know anything about FDU. It's just a name that I'm throwing out there. It could be Southeast Louisiana State for all we know. Like who knows? And the fact that it's been going on, we've known that this has been going on under the table for 3, 4, 5 decades. It's unbelievable that all of a sudden this just comes out. And here's Mark Emmert. You mentioned the head of the NCAA. He made a statement that was in the article that called it a systematic failure. He's the system.
Right. It's his failure.
It's his mess. It's
correct.
His problem. He's a paper idol, a golden calf, if you will, to use a biblical reference, that people just, for whatever reason, worship the NCAA without seeing all the faults of it or acknowledging the faults and doing something about it. The NCAA is not a governing body. And the FBI, I really hope that at the end of all this, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I really hope that at the end of all this, the FBI recommends or forces the hand and the NCAA dissolves as it is and becomes an actual legitimate governing body that can actually enforce people, because other than the two phrases that I mentioned, impermissible benefits and plausible deniability, there's one other word that means absolutely nothing in college basketball: vacate. Vacate wins, vacate titles. We saw it with Louisville last week. What does that actually do to punish
nothing? It's
anybody
stupid.
From continuing to do it?
No, there's no purpose in doing it whatsoever. We all know that Louisville, won the 2013 national championship. We all know that Memphis was in the 2008 national championship. It's stupid. Okay, this whole thing is ridiculous. It's embarrassing. And to be completely honest with you, I don't really care about these violations. I know a lot of people do. I know, Dick Vitale was crying on television a day or two ago. I mean, give me a break. Some people are treating the NCAA like it's some sort of fairy tale, forest or something. It's a swamp, okay? And we're all swimming in the swamp, and we're, doing backstrokes in the swamp because we love to watch what the swamp produces, okay? Now, look, the fact that there are federal crimes involved, that does matter, okay? That is a problem. But the element of the players being paid, I could care less. They should be paid, okay? And if you didn't think they were being paid, I've got some ice that I can sell you on Amazon, okay? The whole thing is so ridiculous. Quite frankly, I'm tired of talking about it because we all know they're getting paid, and at the end of the day, I don't care that they're getting paid. I don't care if DeAndre Ayton got $100,000. Good for him. I would have taken $200,000.
But here's the issue. Here's where my biggest problem with all of this is. I think it's one thing for a school or a coach like a Sean Miller, who, by the way, how does he still have a job? I mean, as soon as the FBI has wiretapping that he's saying he's going to give a 5-star recruit $100,000, how is he not immediately fired?
He should probably be out.
I don't understand that by the University of Arizona. By the way, that athletic department, oh my God, dumpster
they're
fire.
a mess.
But other than that, I mean, when you look at it, what I think the bigger issue is that a lot of people have is when it becomes, it's one thing for it to be a school or a coach. It's another thing for it to be an agent preying, essentially, for lack of a better term, on a 17, 16-year-old kid. I think that's where a lot of people have the issue, an 18-year-old. The other part is, we started off this show talking about impermissible benefits. What I really don't understand, why is it wrong for someone to buy a kid dinner? Why is that?
Yeah, of course. It's ridiculous.
Why is it that nobody's allowed to buy a student-athlete dinner? That I don't understand. I understand that they're an agent. It can be seen as bribery. I can understand that, which is wrong, I guess, and according to the FBI is a punishment by federal law. But why is it wrong for an agent, for a coach, for a booster, for an alum to buy a kid dinner, buy a kid a cup of coffee? Why is that wrong? I don't think. Do you remember a couple of years ago we had this whole issue about if a student athlete could take an extra bagel or something from whatever,
yes.
There was something about like extra snacks. Like, why are
Yeah.
these issues? I understand $74,000, $23,000 to Isaiah Whitehead at Seton Hall. Like, I understand those are wrong. But why is it that a guy can't go and buy a kid dinner or something like that, or take his family to dinner? I get it, I understand it, but and John, listen, I'm never going to be for paying the players simply because not every student athlete is able to generate that. It's a rabbit hole that is unbelievable. Like, what do you tell a women's gymnastics athlete that she's not worth the same as a football player just because her sport doesn't generate revenue, or a men's golfer or a men's baseball player just because he doesn't generate? Now, what I think, and this is interesting, I heard Seth Greenberg, I was listening to him on ESPNU radio on Sirius XM earlier this week, or last week I should say, and he had an interesting idea. When you think about it, John, those 25 players that are listed, the ones that really jump out at you, Denny Smith, Miles Bridges, Bam Adebayo, Isaiah Whitehead, there might be maybe 20 total kids across the country that are worth that $75,000, so to speak. He had an idea of give them the option. You can either take your full ride scholarship, or we can basically sign you to a contract that allows you to earn money off your likeness while you're in college.
That's interesting.
It's an interesting dynamic. There's still a lot to think about, but when you look at that on paper and you give a kid a choice, I think you'll have a lot more kids go the route of taking the full ride and risking impermissible benefits and all their name being dragged through the mud once they finally realize that, hey, listen, you can make money off your likeness, but you still got to pay tuition, room and board, and all that stuff.
Breaking down the farcical NCAA here inside the cheap seats, Jon Lauder and Christian Heimall on the Public House Media Network. Please make sure to go to thephmedia.com and also like our Facebook page. You can also check out the daily poll question, should student athletes get paid? I think you know where I stand and where Christian stands, but make sure that you answer the poll question and check out all the information on the Facebook page. That idea from Seth Greenberg is interesting, but I don't really agree with the thought process of you can only pay the basketball and the football players. I think you can. Now, I know that that's not a popular thought process. I don't think it's a sexism thing because I wouldn't pay the men's golfers or the baseball players. What I would do is if your sport makes a certain amount of revenue for the university, a certain percentage, you can get paid. Because some schools, it's different. UConn women's basketball makes a lot of money. Louisiana Lafayette's women's basketball program does not. So you do have to sort of delineate between certain things. And yes, that would be difficult, but it wouldn't be any more difficult than the situation they're in now. The other thing is, a lot of these Division I athletes, especially in the smaller sports, they are not guaranteed scholarships. Some programs only get 4 or 5 or 6 scholarships. Right. I think if you're going to pay the basketball and the football players, everyone that's on any one of these sports teams needs to be guaranteed a scholarship. That's how I would solve the problem. But again, you're absolutely right that you're going down a rabbit hole. It's not easy. It's not simple. But if you don't make some sort of change, this is just going to continue. Because really, there's not that much of a reason to not do it if you're a player. Because at the end of the day, if you're DeAndre Ayton, you got your money. Okay, so you sit. Who cares? You're going to get drafted in the top 5, and you're going to make money. So unless the NCAA and the NBA can come up with some agreement, which the NBA is not going to do because this is a free feeder system for them, you're not going to be able to solve this problem. So, I mean, the whole thing really is a disaster. But I honestly find it comical because the fact that it's under this guise of amateurism just makes the whole thing, even more ridiculous than it already is.
The fact that everybody tries to say they're students first before athletes.
Yeah, give me a break.
Not. But, I mean, and here's the other part, John. When you look at it, I mean, the last school that you worked for, the last Division I college, their athletic apparel was all from one specific vendor, correct?
Correct.
How much money are those vendors, the Under Armours, the Adidas, the Nikes, giving to these schools for all – and it's all sports too. It's not just like, for instance – it's not like the golfers can all of a sudden, if it's Under Armour, they can, or if it's Nike, they can just decide not to wear Nike golf apparel. They got to wear whatever the school has, kind of deal. So the sponsors and the athletics, the apparel companies, they're the ones that are really, really behind a lot of this because, we saw that. How much money was Rick Pitino getting from Nike or whatever, just as his contract with Nike, on top of what he was getting from Louisville?
Oh, yeah.
And all that stuff. So, it goes far beyond just the schools, just the agents. And again, like I said this earlier, I think where the real big issue for a lot of people is the fact that it's an agent, a guy who's mid-30s, early 40s, for lack of a better term, preying on a teenager and basically saying, listen, kid, here's $74,000, sign with us once you actually get into the NBA type deal. That's, I think, where a lot of people have issues, is you're going to start getting those kids into really, really bad situations financially and personally too early in their lives.
We've got more to break down the NCAA when we come back. It's a huge issue, and it's not going away. So we'll be back in a moment here inside the Cheap Seats.
Sam Kirby, host of Cinema Stories here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Cinema Stories, where we hang out and just talk movie and TV news and reviews, and it's awesome. A new show comes out every single Tuesday. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Cinema Stories. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Perfect song for what we're talking about here inside the Cheap Seats. Jon Lauder, Christian Heimall with you on the Public House Media Network. Make sure you check out the podcast, really anywhere you can find one, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, and on and on and on. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. You can follow me at Jon_Lauder. That's JON_LAUDER. You can follow Christian at Chris Heimall. That's CHRISHEIMALL. Money is the issue. Money is the problem. Money, cash rules everything around me, as the great Wu-Tang Clan once said. And it's ruling everything around the NCAA right now. When you've got players like, let me make sure I get this right, Christian, Tim Quarterman, at the time a junior at LSU, received at least $16,000. I think I might be able to beat Tim Quarterman one-on-one. So if he's receiving $16,000, you can only imagine what some of these bigger players are receiving. Now, DeAndre Ayton's family has come out and said, he would never accept this kind of money, and he's a perfect child, and he once, saved a kitten from a burning building and all this other garbage. The whole thing is just
Carlos
Christian,
Delfino got what, like $86?
Yeah.
Carlos Delfino, is that what he's now playing over in Europe?
Yeah, and Charles Barkley just got a crit case every other day. So, the whole thing is just, you have to laugh to stop yourself from crying like Dick Vitale, because the whole thing is just, it's macabre. It really is. And again, like I said before the break, if you can't figure out a way to get the NBA and the NCAA together on this, it's not going to go away. And I don't know if that's possible, because what does the NBA have to gain by getting involved with the NCAA here? Maybe they'll look good, to the public, but is it really going to benefit them? And the answer is no. They're getting a year of these players in college, which is growing their stock in the way the fans view them. So it's helpful to the NBA. And what do they care if Diamond Stone receives $14,000? He's not good enough to play in the league anyway. Who cares? It doesn't matter. So the NBA gets, and it's NCAA that's got the egg on their face.
Yeah, it's and the NBA really doesn't matter, because I think the NBA is loving this, because you know what this is?
Oh, yeah.
This is the perfect opportunity to get rid of the one and done. This is the perfect chance and the perfect argument.
Which they really should anyway.
Right. And listen, it should be, in my opinion, it should be the way baseball is done. If you want to come out after high school, great. If as soon as you sign that national letter of intent, you're locked into school for 3 years. You're locked in, and then you become draft eligible as a junior. But And then you'll see guys like, for instance, a Bam Adebayo, or maybe Bam Adebayo will probably go out of high school, or Isaiah Whitehead will go after his junior year like he did. It's one of those things where the NBA is probably loving this, so they don't have to worry about the one-and-dones anymore. They don't have to worry about, let them go to the G League for crying out loud. Who cares? Let them go do what they want to do. If they are worth that kind of money, like I said, the fact that they can get involved with these corruptions, these essentially loan sharks, God forbid that ever happens. I mean, remember the Boston College point shaving scandal?
Oh, yeah.
They stopped Henry Hill. They made a movie out of this, for crying out loud. I mean, the fact that they stopped paying these kids for point shaving because they knew, what are you going to do? You're going to go tell the NCAA on yourself that you're accepting funds and get banned from college sports? Like, what are you going to do?
Right.
That's the worst possible thing you can have there happening for these kids. And here's another idea, and I've tossed this idea out with friends at bars and in the cheap seats when I'm sitting there watching games, is what if you had, for instance, you had a kid sign a contract, basically, that held a certain amount of money that you guys think he's worth. You said a percent. If your sport makes a certain percentage of revenue for the school, then that sport can pay their players, basically. If you feel like Isaiah Whitehead is worth, over the course of his 4 years at Seton Hall, say he's worth to you $135,000, right? He signs a contract that once he graduates, once he completes his 4 years at Seton Hall, he gets that money. If he declares early and leaves, he gets less of that money. Maybe there are team bonuses for winning the Big East Championship, for making the Sweet 16, all those kind of things. And it basically becomes, you sign an individual contract with each player based on what you think they're worth, because you already do that, by the way, with a national letter of intent, because not every single kid on Michigan State is getting a full ride. Some of them are getting a half scholarship, and they still got to pay for room and board. Some of them are getting just room and board, and they got to pay for tuition. So you're basically doing the same exact thing. It looks a little bit better because then, quote unquote, you can pay the players for their likeness. And really, to be kind of selfish, we can get the NCAA video games back on EA Sports, because I've been missing playing it for a very long time. I've been back playing NCAA 09 with freaking Larry Fitzgerald in a Pitt uniform sitting on the cover. You think he saw any royalties for that? No.
Yeah,
so,
no.
We took so much advantage of these kids over the first part of this century that now it's about time we start giving that to them. And for instance, and we talk about, I bring up the non-money sports, the swimming, golfing, baseball, softball, lacrosse, soccer, those type of things. Obviously, some of the big programs, Stanford women's soccer probably makes some sort of money, I would assume. LSU baseball probably makes something.
Yeah, I would think.
Florida softball, you would think, makes something. But, for them, they could make money based off of appearances, public appearances at at schools, like any other. I guarantee you, professional athletes like LeBron James and all of them, they get paid to go to these professional events, so to these public appearances. They get paid an appearance fee. So there are ways we can do this. My only hope is that it doesn't become a quick overcorrection trying to fix life type right away, and then it just is even worse more than anything else. This process needs to play out. It's going to get worse before it gets better, but it absolutely has to, for the NCAA and for student athletes to finally get this thing right.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I just hate the whole you can't pay the men's college basketball and the college football because of rowing. Yes, you can. I mean, no offense, I don't care unless your rowing team is bringing in revenue, and no offense, it's not, because it's rowing. They're actually losing money on a lot of these sports. I'm not saying the sports shouldn't be there. They absolutely should. But if you didn't have football and basketball, you'd be operating in the red instead of the black. So, you have to look at this objectively. It's not about being, sexist or sportist or whatever you want to call it. It's being realistic. It's looking at this like an intelligent, logical human being. And that's something the NCAA cannot seem to do. Men's basketball and football are what allow college sports to function. So therefore, they are the ones that get the biggest piece of the pie, period. But if you can guarantee that everybody playing Division I sports gets a scholarship, to me, that would lessen some of the, gnashing of teeth and frustration that would come up when a player like Isaiah Whitehead's getting money. And if the NCAA says we don't have enough money, that's garbage because they're literally wiping their butt with $100 bills. They have more than enough money to make this happen. And guess what? If a certain institution doesn't seem to have the money, then they've got to relook at how they're doing things because clearly something's not right.
He's Jon Lauder. I'm Christian Heimall. You're in the cheap seats here on Public House Media. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review. Find us on all your podcast streaming channels, iHeartRadio, as well as Spreaker.com. ThePHmedia.com is our website. You can subscribe to us on Google Play, as well as Apple Podcasts and iTunes. We really hope you guys do. Leave us a review, leave us a rating, and then, of course, check us out on Facebook, the Cheap Seats Sports Podcast. Vote on our daily poll question here. Today, it is, should student-athletes get paid?
Yes.
A simple yes or no. John, I think you and I both agree here. We just agree that it could be done. We just disagree on how it could get done.
Yes, definitely.
And I think you're right, because I used to be one of those guys who would say, and you and I had this argument in college all the time.
Yeah.
I used to argue that you can't pay the football players because women's softball doesn't, you're not going to be able to pay them. But at the same time, you kind of are with regards to the scholarship because, like you said, not everybody has a full ride, and like we talked about. So I think we can both agree on that. What do you guys think listening? Check us out, the Cheap Seat Sports Podcast. I think a lot of this, John, is going to be kind of knee-jerk reaction. I think it's going to be overwhelmingly yes for our listeners just because of what's
I would think
on currently. Well, maybe not just because of that, but I think that's going to have a huge impact. Similar to how, by the way, did you see last week our poll question was Cavaliers or the field? I think a lot of people took the field because they're tired of LeBron James and the Cavaliers. But
yes.
So, but it's one of those things. There are still players. You mentioned DeAndre Ayton. He's still able to play. Miles Bridges is able to play. Wendell Carter Jr. is able to play at Duke. There are a number of guys who are still eligible for now, but as we talked about earlier, I don't understand how Sean Miller still has a job and how he's allowed to make the decision to not coach. I mean, how great would that have been, though? If Sean, what kind of brass ones would he have to have gone out onto the court on Saturday night and coached against Oregon in that game? That would have been something, especially on the road. He would have been crucified if he had actually done that after the wiretapping comes out on Friday, saying that he actually agreed to give $100,000 to this recruit. So, and then you kind of wonder. I mean, Arizona State earlier this year, it didn't really get mentioned much, but Arizona State got their first commit from a 5-star recruit since Harden, and nobody really talked or wondered about that. Zion Williamson going to Duke. Nobody's. I wonder how much of these kids who have already signed their NLIs are going to be talked about and going to be investigated for if they were given a certain amount of cash to be able to go to these schools. But
the craziest part of the Arizona situation is in Sean Miller's contract, he can still get most of his money even if he's fired with cause.
Right.
So, or better yet, did like a blind person put together this contract for Arizona? I mean, how did they agree to this? I mean, no offense.
When, Michigan was having issues with Rich Rodriguez, and then Arizona now made it look so much better. Like, Arizona's made Michigan look so much better after Rich Rodriguez.
The whole thing is just incredible. Like, Sean Miller, solid coach. He's not John Wooden. I mean, why would you agree to a contract where he can get, I think it's 80% of the money, even if he's fired with cause? That's insane. So, like, if he murdered someone, he'd be able to walk away with 80%. I mean, my brain hurts, Christian. My brain hurts.
It's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. But, here's the insane part. These guys are going to get jobs again.
Of course they are.
They're going to get jobs again because, I mean, listen, you can get fired for anything except losing. And these coaches, John Calipari, how many jobs has he gotten? How many Final Fours have been quote-unquote vacated? Rick Pitino, he's going to get another job in a couple of years. Maybe it's in the NBA, but, I mean, Bruce Pearl, for crying out loud, has another job.
And, by the way, when he wasn't coaching, he was making, stacks of money at ESPN. So the whole thing is that all these networks and colleges, they're all just in a big bed together, laying on top of huge piles of cash. That's basically what it is.
Unfortunate, considering how much you and I both love college sports. I mean,
it's for sure.
We've turned a blind eye to it as well. I mean, we've kind of understood, knowing that, hey, listen, we're going to watch this and we're going to know and sit there and go, Kyrie Irving could have been paid whatever it was. I mean, imagine how much money would have been shelled out to get LeBron to go play at Ohio State? To get
They would have given him the whole university.
Like, you imagine these things? Kevin Garnett to go play at Minnesota or something like that? I mean, it's unbelievable how much this and how much we've just kind of let it happen. Because we want to watch what we're watching. We enjoy this. And the insane part is Turner Sports agreed to a new 8-year deal with an 8-year extension for March Madness. It's going to go till, I think, 2031 or something like that. Nothing is changing, and we need to not be naive about it, which is the unfortunate part. But I think it all comes back to one thing, John, for me. It all comes back to one thing and one thing only. Mark Emmert and the NCAA are 100% at fault for this.
Oh, 100%.
Because they are a false governing body. I know, listen, I don't want to, this is not a slight on you, but how in the hell does Louisville get their 2013 national title vacated because a stripper came to perform for recruits, but North Carolina is able to keep their national titles despite 20 years of academic fraud?
For sure.
How is that allowed?
It's insane. It's insane. And the crazy thing is nobody on the North Carolina basketball team could even spell academic or fraud. So, the whole thing is just insane. And the other element of this that no one really seems to be talking about is, we've got about a month. A month. What am I talking about? We've got less than that. We've got a couple of weeks.
Tournaments start this weekend.
Right. We got a couple of weeks until the NCAA tournament. Can you imagine if more of this comes out and like half the teams are not allowed to participate? They'd have to shut the whole tournament down. I mean, they wouldn't do that, but that would, just the thought of that is crazy, too.
It'd be unbelievable. So much more to talk about here in the Cheap Seats. We're halfway home on this Monday, February 26th. Christian Heimall, Jon Lauder here with you. When we come back, the Winter Olympics just wrapped up. Do you care? Are you going to miss it? Or how do you feel about Team USA's performances over in South Korea? We'll also we'll get to the NBA's they're back in action as well. And some interesting signings in the NFL as well. Plus our Mojo Monday, who's hot, who's not. All coming up here in a little bit in the Cheap Seats.
This is Katie, co-host of Coffee with Keith and Katie here on Public House Media. Once you are done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Coffee with Keith and Katie, where we talk about the adventures of our daily lives and relationship. A new show comes out every Tuesday and Friday at 8:30 p.m. Central. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Coffee with Keith and Katie. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Oh, I feel like this is like the music we need to listen to every day during the winter. I just feel better. Don't you? So much more light. But I don't know. How are you over there in the New York area?
Oh, I mean, today it's kind of rainy and, the whole weekend was kind of rainy. Now it's just sort of, blah. The weather is kind of my feelings on the Winter Olympics.
Fair enough. Well, we'll make it a quick discussion then, Johnny, because there really isn't much to talk about. The closing ceremonies yesterday, Winter Olympics coming to a close. The biggest thing, I thought it was so interesting how much we were people were talking about being disappointed in Team USA throughout this whole thing. Like it's really interesting to watch. But then you had some amazing things happen where, for instance, you got a 17-year-old in Chloe Kim winning snowboard gold. You've got the women's hockey team beating Canada in a shootout, which was tremendous. I did actually stay up to watch that one. And then the men's curling, their first ever gold medal game, and they beat a powerhouse in Sweden. So my favorite part about the Olympics, the Winter Olympics at least, is every 4 years the entire country becomes experts on curling without knowing anything about curling. That's probably my
that's because the people that participate in curling don't know anything about curling. And it's funny to call somebody a powerhouse in a sport that like 9 people play. But I mean, look, I'm not a huge Olympics person, especially the Winter Olympics. I mean, most of it to me is just you're on either a really tiny sled or a really big sled, or you're pushing something that's on a sled, or I just sort of want there to be dogs with the sleds. But anybody that's upset about how America did is just a typical pompous American jerk. I mean, it's not the Summer Olympics. We dominate the Summer Olympics. That's what we do. The Winter Olympics, that's for places where the sun doesn't shine. Yeah. Okay? Like, Norway's got 90 feet of snow all the time. Of course they're dominating. I mean, their children, they give birth to them in the snow. I mean, it's just ridiculous to me that people get upset about, America not having the most medals in the Winter Olympics. It's not going to happen. And look, some great.
A little bit worse because there were no NHL players for anybody. So it's the one thing that a lot of people watch the Summer Olympics because of the NBA Dream Team and be able to put those guys together. And a lot of reasons why we'll watch the Winter Olympics is because you're going to get those NHL players playing in hockey. And I mean, we were both there. I remember we were both watching, and you and I are going to do this a lot, or at least I will. We're going to reference, our time together at Hofstra.
Yes.
But I remember vividly sitting there as we used to, Hofstra Radio has a weekly sports show on Sunday nights, The Locker Room, and I remember sitting there watching the gold medal game when Sidney Crosby in Vancouver beat the U.S. for Canada in Vancouver. But there was none of that this year because nobody knew who the hell these kids were putting on their American sweater.
No, their parents didn't know who they were. So, and look, that was disappointing. It would have been nice for them to medal.
Yeah.
But, women's hockey won their first gold in 20 years.
Right.
We won a gold in a sport where you shuffle big cubes around, which was cool. I mean, not cubes, spheres, whatever. And look, Lindsey Vonn was a little disappointing. Would have been nice to see her get a gold medal. But, yeah, you mentioned Chloe Kim. She became a star overnight. That'll last like a week.
Shaun White at age 33, turning back the clock.
The Olympics is always like this. We get into it for a couple of weeks. These athletes become household names. Then, no offense, everybody starts to not care, after a couple of weeks, unless you're Michael Phelps or, Michael Phelps. I mean, it's the Olympics. It's not a daily thing, and American ice skating is a disaster. I think that's part of the problem too. We can't land a jump in ice skating. I mean, I wasn't really watching it, but my wife watched a lot of the ice skating, and I'm sitting there, and every single time an American woman is figure skating, she falls. Every time. It's like me trying to get from my bedroom to the refrigerator. There's tripping, there's embarrassment every time, and I'm like, these are the best of the best. Right. This is the best we can bring to the table, and then you've got these little 2'4", Russian figure skaters, and they're landing septuple lutzes and stuff. That's just the way it is. All of these things are just not what we're really known for. Mm-hmm. They're the outer sports, so to speak.
Right, and here's my issue with it. When you think about it, and I'm going to touch on this as we get later on into the show because I want to bring them up as part of our Mojo Monday segment, so I don't want to give it away. But here's what I think is a big issue and why we don't do as well in the Winter Olympics, or really why we don't do as well in the popular like NBA and the NHL, why we don't do as well in those sports. Because there isn't enough money from a federal standpoint for these youth programs.
Yeah.
There isn't any.
Sure.
I mean, we talk about taking money away from the arts, and it's a travesty that happens. But we do the same in some of these smaller niche sports, like a snowboarding, like figure skating. I don't even know how much money is actually given from U.S. figure skating to actually help these girls, help these guys learn at a young age how to actually do it and compete on the world stage. Meanwhile, in Russia, in Sweden, in Germany, this is what they do on a year-round basis. It's like football and baseball to us. It's the same reason why we don't. It's the same reason why we didn't qualify for the World Cup this summer. Is because there's no money given at the youth level to be able to actually compete with the best in the world. It's one thing for us to say you're the best in the U.S., but it's another thing to say you're the best in the world. And there are too many sports that we as a society don't really care about, so we don't give money to actually improve our standing. We just want to sit there and be disappointed at the fact that we finished, fourth in the medal count, I think, this year or something like that?
Yes.
But, in another 2 years, it's in Tokyo. We're going to get all excited because who's going to be the heir apparent to Michael Phelps in swimming? Is the gymnastics team going to dominate again for the women's gymnastics team? Are they going to dominate again? Is LeBron James going to team up with Kyrie Irving and be happy in another All-Star game basically for him? Or is he even going to play in the Olympics in 2 years, in 2020 in Tokyo? But I do want to reference our Cheap Seats Sports podcast on Facebook, our poll question from Saturday. If you didn't get a chance to vote on it, which USA gold medal performance were you more impressed with, women's hockey or men's curling? John, it was really close, 57% more impressed with the men's curling team winning the gold medal as opposed to women's hockey. And I'll agree with that.
Why? I can't imagine why you'd be more impressed with curling than hockey.
Never had they ever won better than a bronze. And here's the thing. Here's why. This is going to be my main argument. There have been a total of 18 women's hockey world championship games and a total now of 6 women's hockey Olympic gold medal games. USA and Canada have combined to win every single one of those championships. So it's not as if the rest of the world is incredibly better. This is why softball got eliminated from the Summer Olympics, because it was just one team dominating over and over again. It's literally just been the U.S. and Canada for 20 years doing this.
So if that's a problem, let's just get rid of basketball then.
Listen, I'm not going to say no to that. You know me. I'm not going to say no to that. I mean, I get why they got rid of baseball, but I actually like the World Baseball Classic, so I'm fine with it not being in the Summer Olympics. I like the way they do that, but
yeah.
So I'm not upset about it, but I watched the match, and listen, I get it. A lot of people, this is my favorite thing about curling. Curling is like darts or pool. After you've had a few beers, you think you can do it. Like, that's the best thing in the world.
They have a few beers before they do it. It's not a sport if you drink before it.
Well, then I guess I've never been an athlete in my life. Then I guess, but that's,
Well, I certainly haven't. That's why I'm talking about them.
Well, either way, whether you liked it or didn't, the Olympics are over, and now we get to wait, and 2020 when we get to be all excited.
Yeah, I'm excited for the summer games. They're always good.
The summer games are always a little bit more exciting. I think definitely. Hopefully, we can actually watch some of them, even though they're going to be in Tokyo in 2020. So, John, real quick before we get to our next break, I do want to mention a couple of things that I thought were kind of interesting in the NFL. Free agents are going to start coming around and getting signed a little bit here. You're going to start seeing guys get cut as well. I thought what was really interesting, though, is the fact that Blake Bortles getting that extension with the Jacksonville Jaguars now through 2021, and that kind of really put the kibosh on a lot of people saying that they're going to go out and sign a free agent, maybe go and try to get Kirk Cousins, or they're going to draft a quarterback this year in the draft. Good on Blake Bortles for playing the way he did this year and getting a 3-year extension.
Yeah, okay. That's true. And the cap hit for this year for them goes down from 19 to 10 million. So that's a good thing. But the part of this that really grinds my gears, as the great Peter Griffin once said, if you're showing him the confidence now, why on God's green earth did you not show him that same confidence in the AFC Championship game? They should have won that game, but instead they treated him like a 2-year-old in the second half and lost that game. But now you're going to give him this huge extension after treating him with the kid gloves. I mean, the whole thing to me is just absurd. I would not have done it, but I also don't care about the Jacksonville Jaguars. They can do whatever they want as far as I'm concerned. The thing that I'm most interested in right now is Kansas City trading Marcus Peters. Did not see that coming. Now, he clearly was an issue in the locker room. There's been a lot of stories printed about that. He seems to move to the beat of his own drum, so to speak, so I'm intrigued to see how he meshes with this, resurgent Rams squad. But this LA Rams team was good to begin with. Their biggest issue was the defensive backfield because of injuries, and now they slide in a guy that has 19 interceptions, I believe, in his first 3 seasons. Really good trade for LA. Not 100% sure what Kansas City's doing right now. Obviously, they traded Alex Smith so that they could start Pat Mahomes. That I had no real problem with. But I don't fully understand getting rid of Marcus Peters unless he really is that big of an issue in the locker room. And, of course, we don't know that because we're not there.
Yeah, and especially when you consider the fact that you already, you lost Eric Berry again this year. Who knows how much he's going to be able to come back. That secondary was going to be an issue in the offseason anyway. So the fact that they went out and got rid of probably their best guy there was definitely questionable. So, I mean, it's been a weird offseason when you think about it, considering the trade of Alex Smith, which we kind of saw, considering the fact that I was really surprised that Larry Fitzgerald said he was going to go back to Arizona before they signed a quarterback. because that I felt would have been a huge key for him. What's going to happen in Minnesota? Minnesota could legitimately sign another quarterback or draft another quarterback, even though they have 3 of them. Is Nick Foles going to get traded? Where does Kirk Cousins end up? The fact that A.J. McCarron is now a free agent and people are talking about him actually getting signed, which is interesting to me. But, I mean, there's so much weird stuff going on in the world of the NFL. And then you've got, of course, the mock drafts coming out, where somehow, out of nowhere, the bandwagon I've been on for 2 years, finally people are starting to show up, and Baker Mayfield could be the 6th pick in the draft.
Yes.
It's one of those things that's just so interesting. I love this time of year for the I think I like this part of the NFL more than I do the actual season sometimes.
I think a lot of people do.
It's just a different level of crazy and stupidity when you get into February and March when it comes time for the NFL.
Yeah, if I'm Minnesota, I am filling my Brinks truck full of money, and I am driving straight to Washington, and I am giving Kirk Cousins whatever he wants. Because if Minnesota gets Cousins, they're in the Super Bowl. I'm going to tell you that right now. As for Nick Foles, if I'm Philadelphia, I'm not trading him because Carson Wentz, who knows what's up with Wentz? I mean, I've read some articles where not only will he not be ready for the start of the year, we all know that, he might not be ready for the first 8 games.
I think Mike Tirico tweeted out from South Korea that Wentz wasn't going to be ready until at least week 2 and that he was going to lose his starting job.
Well, no, I can't imagine he'd even be ready by week 2. Yeah, anybody that says he's going to lose his job to me, though, that's crazy. I mean, yes, Foles played really well for a couple of games, but
the best insurance policy since Jimmy Garoppolo. He really is at this point, just because of how he played.
Yeah, but I really feel like a lot of how he played was due to the coaching.
I don't disagree there. I don't at all. I think Doug Peterson
because when he was with the Rams, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with a beach ball. So, again, I'm not taking anything away from him. I like Nick Foles. I like the way he carries himself. It was a great story. Anytime the Patriots lose is just gorgeous and beautiful. But, I'm sorry, to me, he's not Jimmy Garoppolo. Because Jimmy Garoppolo has now gone somewhere else and proven that he can win games with a 49ers team that's got, mostly D-leaguers on their squad. So, to me, he's not Garoppolo, but also you'd be insane if you were the Eagles to trade him. That would be just bonkers. And if I'm the Browns, I'm now getting A.J. McCarron without having to make that ridiculous trade. They are lucky that trade was denied because it was stupid to give up a second and a third for McCarron. Now you can get him with just cash, and the Browns are flush with cash. So I would, if you're not going to get Cousins, and I don't think you are, because I don't care how much money they're giving him. If I'm Cousins, I am avoiding the Jets and I'm avoiding the Browns. Yeah. If I'm the Browns, A.J. McCarron would be a really nice spot, and then with one of those, first or fourth pick, I'm also taking a quarterback. But again, that's just me. But yeah, the NFL offseason is awesome.
Number 1. You could take Saquon Barkley at number 1 if you sign A.J. McCarron, and then go out and get a lineman at number 4, and you're
that too.
set for this season.
Yeah, that too. And I really like Barkley. I know a lot of people think that you shouldn't draft him with the top 5 pick. I am not one of those people. I think he's worthy of a top 5 pick. We saw what Ezekiel Elliott brought to the table as a top 5 pick, and a lot of people think Barkley's better than Elliott. But again, who knows? It's all a crapshoot, and that's why it's so awesome. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, we'll talk some NBA. We're finally back from the All-Star break, and the Warriors are scoring like 1,000 points a game. So we'll get Christian's thoughts on that. We'll also talk about a funny thing that Tyronn Lue said about LeBron James, which really bothered me. And then we'll give you some Mojo Monday. Who's got the good mojo? Who's got the bad? I think Christian's going with the good. I'm going with the bad because I just like to be mean to people. So we'll be back in a moment right here inside the Cheap Seats.
This is Ryan Pierce, host of Completely Serious here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Completely Serious, where we talk about sports and have fun with great guests. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Completely Serious. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Oh, my childhood. It just does not get better than this. Just makes me think of Marv Albert screaming at people. And Bill Walton talking about smoking peyote in the desert.
Remember when they had Nelly do like a version of this a couple years ago?
And then we killed him because it was horrible. Because you can't redo something like this.
Let it hit. Hang on.
I just want to start shooting threes and punching stuff. Jon Lauder and Christian Heimall with you back inside the cheap seats reminiscing because this was when the NBA was truly great. Not that it isn't great now. I think the NBA is in a really good spot at the moment, but there was nothing like the NBA on NBC. Make sure that you follow the show by going to the Facebook page, going to the phmedia.com, checking us out on Twitter. I'm at Jon_Lauder, JON_LAUDER. Make sure you check out Christian's Twitter profile because he'll be tweeting a lot about baseball soon, and you'll want to be keeping up with that. That's at Chris Heimall, ChrisHeimall. Talking some NBA now. We're back from the All-Star break, and Golden State looks just they look like exactly what I expected them to look, and it's like they care again. 134 points against the Clippers, 32-point blowout win against Oklahoma City. Not really shocking, though, Christian. This really isn't surprising. It was clear they needed the All-Star break to recharge, and I would expect them to fully dominate the rest of the way because they're the Warriors. They needed the break, and it was well utilized because even though half the team played in the All-Star game, they still look very well rested, and they're looking as good as one would expect at this point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to know. I mean, last week we were talking about how the All-Star break might be the worst thing for the Cavs because it could break things up with that chemistry that they had after all the trades. It did the exact opposite for Golden State. It gave them exactly what they needed, a breather, a chance to get away from everybody, kind of just maybe get their own mindset, even though, as you said, half of them were actually playing in the All-Star game. But it's pretty impressive to watch them. I've always been in awe of them. I mean, I'm much more of a defensive guy when it comes to it, which is why I've always liked what Greg Popovich has done and why I love what Brad Stevens is doing in Boston. But, I mean, it's to me, so impressive to see a group of so many talented offensive players be completely selfless when you think about it.
It's insane.
It's unnecessary to watch. I mean, and I think that's why all the talk of LeBron going to Golden State, that like 3 days that we talked about that, was idiotic because there's no way in the world LeBron's ego would allow him to share the ball with that many guys. For crying out loud, he got rid of his best option to win a championship in Cleveland this past offseason. So there's no way he would have been able to survive in that atmosphere. And I think a lot of it really has to do, and we don't give a lot of credit to a lot of coaches in the NBA, but Steve Kerr is becoming that Greg Popovich type.
Yeah.
Maybe not in terms of his actual coaching style on the floor, but his presence is very Greg Popovich. It's very I love Steve Kerr tremendously, and I think what he's done with Golden State, you really see that when a group of guys as talented as they are all about the team. They understand that the sum of the parts is greater, and that's a credit to Steve Kerr.
Oh, for sure. They've been very impressive, and you're right. They're such a tremendous team despite all of the spectacular individuals. And look, other than Houston, to me, we talked about this last show, no one really has a chance. They're just too good. When they're fully engaged, when they're running on all cylinders, they're pretty much unbeatable. And there's no one in the Eastern Conference that, to me, has even a remote shot. I would be surprised if a series with anybody from the Eastern Conference goes past 5 games. I just think they're that much better, but I hope I'm wrong. But we'll have to see what happens. Now, some other interesting news in the NBA. Minnesota very, very lucky that Jimmy Butler avoided a torn ACL. He went down with an injury. Has an injured meniscus, but at least not the ACL like Kristaps Porzingis has. Yep. And really, it isn't so much an issue for this season because it's not like the Timberwolves are winning a championship. Right. But would have been a bigger problem moving forward because it would have been a very long recovery period, would have messed up next season also. So very lucky for the Timberwolves that they escape that whole torn ACL disaster.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. I mean, it's one of those things you brace yourself every single time there's that big sigh, and people kind of grab their throat a little bit, being very concerned. especially for a guy in Jimmy Butler who, such a young star, and they tried their best in Chicago. They really did. They tried so hard to make things work, and yet, for whatever reason, it just wasn't there. I mean, whether it was him, whether it was the front office, whatever it may have you, but I think the best thing for him is to be in Minnesota with that coaching staff who knows how to use him the right way, and for him to have just a very minor meniscus surgery is going to be wonderful for his career and for the future of the Timberwolves.
Well, the best situation for him would be for Minnesota to magically appear on the Eastern Seaboard so that he can be in the Eastern Conference. That would really be the best thing. But, yeah, he is such a key component of a very interesting squad moving forward. Some other injury news and notes. Now, this kind of happened before the All-Star break, but we really didn't touch on it. Kawhi Leonard opting to continue sitting out, and he may miss the rest of the year. The really weird situation in San Antonio. And this is a team that never has these types of problems. But it seems right now like Leonard doesn't trust the Spurs, which is kind of like not trusting Mr. Rogers or something. It's very weird. It's bizarre. It seems like there's a disconnect, which you never see in San Antonio. And I think there's a chance now he could leave the Spurs. Now, forget this season. They're going nowhere without Leonard. But what do they do moving forward? Because Leonard could leave. And, a very weird situation for San Antonio because other than LaMarcus Aldridge and Murray, who's been playing well at the point, there's not a whole lot there, which you don't typically say about the Spurs. But they're in a bit of a weird situation right now.
It's one of those things, and I'm going to throw this out there just because, without knowing anything, without absolutely knowing nothing about what's happening down there. Leonard is in the midst of, what is this? This is year 3 of a 5-year deal? Yeah. This is year 3 of a 5-year deal that he signed. This, to me, feels like, and he's got a player option for next year. This, to me, is him starting the whole trade me or I'm holding out deal. And I think it would not be surprising at all if he's looking to go to the Eastern Conference, where it's an easier path to the NBA Finals, where he at least has a shot at winning a title. I think he sees the writing on the wall. Houston has gotten significantly better. Golden State is going to continue to be the dominant force in the West. And for him to actually have a chance at winning an NBA championship, and he knows that at 25, he knows that it's not going to take much longer for his career to start going on a downturn. As talented as he is, I mean, he's incredibly defensive, and he's gotten better offensively over the last 2 seasons. So this, to me, feels like the start of a trade demand from Kawhi Leonard. And it feels like to me that it's the Eastern Conference because most players will tell you the ideal place to be from where they protect you from the media, where they respect you in-house, where you're not harassed every time you walk down the street. San Antonio is that place. And to want to leave there is really, or to want to not play there, to feel untrusted there, that's really concerning to me more than anything else.
Yeah, and one other element, I agree with you about the trade situation. Now, something that I've been thinking about that on the surface seems insane, I ran it through the trade machine on ESPN, and it did not go through. You'd need some other auxiliary parts. But let's just say, for sake of argument, Kobe Altman calls up San Antonio.
How did I know go there?
And he says, look, I've got this guy named LeBron James. You might have heard of him. And he's willing to come to San Antonio. Leonard James, straight up. Who says no?
A lot of people. A lot of people say no. I think San Antonio would have to take the contract, too, at least. I mean, you'd probably have to throw in,
he's on a 1-year deal. But make it work.
That's wow. I wasn't even – Cleveland was the last team I was thinking. I was on it I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Washington try to make that happen, to see Indiana or Toronto try to go with them. But that's I'm just trying to imagine that.
Imagine James with Popovich.
How vilified would Kobe Altman be if after making all those deadline deals to try to keep LeBron, that LeBron doesn't leave on his own accord. You trade him to San Antonio. That would be insane.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think you're right about that. I think now look, Cleveland fans are a little psychotic, and understandably so. They've been through a lot, but they've already had LeBron leave once. I think a lot of people think he's probably leaving anyway.
Yeah, I don't think they care anymore.
Right, you can't get a better piece than Kawhi Leonard. You can't. It's not going to happen. And for San Antonio, yes, I know LeBron is older now, but they've got some younger pieces. And I know it would be tougher in the West. It's not going to happen, but I just thought it would be interesting. I think it would be great for Cleveland, but because Washington. The teams you mentioned make sense in theory, but I don't know if Leonard wants to go to any of those places.
Right. Yeah, I don't
but he
think
probably doesn't want to go to Cleveland either. So,
no.
He'll probably basically.
Let me just throw that since you're going crazy.
Yeah,
Al
let's go
Horford
crazy.
And Jaylen Brown.
Oh, stop it! That's not. No, I'd rather have LeBron. Al Horford is. Al Horford's not worth half of what he makes. Now, look, Jaylen Brown's a nice player. Now, okay, all right. Now, if you want to give me Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum for Kawhi Leonard.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, no, Boston would never do that.
I just bought my Jason Tatum jersey. I don't know why I did that, but I don't know why I bought a Duke Players Celtics jersey.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not sure if we can do this show anymore now.
It was either that or
anything's better than Duke. Come on, you know better than that.
I know. It took so long for me to figure it out.
But, Hayward's got an ankle made of Swiss cheese now, so you're probably better off with Tatum. Yeah, but I agree with you. I think Leonard's going to end up leaving, but, who knows for sure. Talking NBA here inside the cheap seats, making ridiculous, trade proposals, because that's what we do. Jon, Lauder, Christian, Heimall with you on the Public House Media Network, talking about the Cavaliers and LeBron James. I read something today on ESPN that almost made me, regurgitate and spit out the food that I was eating. Dave McMenamin, who does a fantastic job covering the Cavs for ESPN.com, had an article talking about LeBron James and the fact that he's not missing any games. And this is the first sentence from the article. I copied and pasted it verbatim into my Google Doc because I just felt the need to say it out loud as a full sentence. LeBron James is on pace to play in all 82 games for the first time in his 15-year career because Cleveland Cavaliers coach Tyronn Lue says the Cavs star feels obligated to be out there every night for his teammates. Let's let that marinate for a little bit. By the way, I'm punching myself in the face right now. You just can't hear it. Okay? So for anybody that wants to compare LeBron and Michael. And look, I am unapologetically a Jordan guy, okay? If I could have gotten Michael Jordan shorts like Bugs Bunny did in Space Jam, I'd wear them on my head, okay? Even if they weren't washed, okay? I am looking right now at a North Carolina banner in my man cave, okay? I am as unapologetically Jordan as it gets, okay? But LeBron James has never played in all 82 games ever in a season. And now he feels like doing it because he's obligated to be out there for his teammates like they're kindergartners that need to be holding a teddy bear. Oh, God, I can't stand him. Are you kidding me? Is that where we're at in the NBA now? That's where we're at? He feels the need to be there for his teammates, to hug them and, give them a snuggie. Come on. Oh, God, I'm so mad.
Now, listen, Lue goes on to say, so I think he's trying to lead by example. I think we still got to be smart about the situation, but the training staff says he feels good. I get the wanting to lead by example part.
Sure.
I understand that, but I think Dave kind of embellished it a little bit.
Maybe.
He feels obligated to be out there every night. Listen, if he felt – this is what I find hilarious about LeBron. This year he's said it so many times, even at the trade deadline, he feels obligated to the city of Cleveland.
Yeah.
Where was that 6 years ago?
Yeah, right.
He's
got his titles now, so he can feel obligated.
What day did you wake up and decide to feel obligated to Cleveland?
Yeah.
When did that happen? So it's just that's hilarious to me.
I'm not even suggesting that LeBron needs to play 82 games at this point. I mean, the amount of mileage on his body is crazy. But he's never played 82 games in any of his 15 seasons, and now he's trying to do it because he feels obligated. I mean, come on. I mean, that's garbage. And then another thing
in LeBron's mind, he's like, I need to play all 82 games so that I can get the scoring title so that people can say I'm better than Jordan. That's what I need to do.
Or so I can get my team into the playoffs because we're a hot pile of garbage without me. Then speaking of the Cavs, Isaiah Thomas, another ridiculous thing, came out today.
Phenomenal shade being thrown. I love it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Came out yesterday and said that the Cavs were in panic mode at the trade deadline. Are you kidding me? You were a disaster. Okay, that trade with Kyrie Irving is going to go down as one of the worst trades in the history of basketball. Okay, they weren't in a panic mode. You are now playing like a pile of hot garbage, and we're blaming other people on the team for the reason why there were issues with the team. So, oh God, Isaiah Thomas, are you kidding me? Oh Lord, you know what? I'm done. I don't even know what else to say anymore.
You're starting to get worked up, so let's.
I'm starting to get really upset.
Let's save it for the last.
I actually woke up my dog now because I'm so angry. Oh my God!
You're in the cheap seats here on Public House Media. Jon Lauder here with you, as we do every Monday. We'll end the show with our Mojo Monday. Who's got some good mojo? Who's got some bad mojo? You seem to be worked up a little bit, John. So I'll let you get it out here to start off this part.
Yeah, my bad mojo's for the entire sport of college basketball. You suck and we hate you. That's basically where I'm at right now with college basketball, okay? I mean, the whole thing is an embarrassment. It's not surprising, but it's an embarrassment. And as I say this out of one side of my mouth, on the other side of my mouth, I'm really excited for the NCAA tournament. So I'm just as messed up as everybody else. I'm just a basket case of emotions, as the great Will Ferrell once said. I'm infuriated at the ridiculousness of the whole thing, and also can't wait to look at the bracket. And I think that emotion right there is a perfect microcosm of how everybody that has any remote interest in college basketball is feeling. But my bad mojo is for the NCAA. Between that and the whole Michigan State thing, I mean, college sports has been going down this rabbit hole for a while, Christian, but they're so far down now, they can't even see sunlight. And they better keep digging because it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, it's bad right now in college basketball, and we touched on the whole first half of the show. And fans, go to our Facebook page of the Cheap Seat Sports Podcast, vote on the daily poll question whether or not you believe student athletes should get paid. John and I gave our answers. It's pretty obvious to see which ones we prefer, but we'd like to hear your guys' thoughts as well as you head to Facebook, the Cheap Seat Sports Podcast. All right, so John, I'm going to end it with some good mojo here.
I like that
because I didn't know about this until late last week when I started doing a little bit more research. So obviously the U.S. women's hockey team, we talked about it, they won their first gold medal in 20 years, 98. But John, that was just it wasn't just the pinnacle of the Olympics for them, the pinnacle of the sport. For the last year, the last 14 months, this group has been fighting tooth and nail for something that our entire society has been fighting for, I feel like. This was from Fortune.com. It was posted a couple of days ago. Natasha Bach did a tremendous job on this. In 2017, the women's ice hockey team boycotted the International Ice Hockey Federation World Championships. They boycotted for 13 days, fighting for equal treatment to the men's team, boycotting USA Hockey, basically, saying we're not even going to represent Team USA at the World Championships unless we get treated equally to the men's team. What ended up happening, over 15 months, they were getting, prior to the whole boycott, they were getting paid $6,000 every 4 years. The U.S. members of the U.S. women's hockey team. That's all they were getting for being members of Team USA. $6,000 every 4 years as they get prepared for the Olympics. They had a contract dispute that went 15 months. The players won $70,000 apiece per year for women's hockey team members, which was absolutely tremendous. Not only that, but they got more money given into youth girls hockey programs to help continue to build women's hockey in the United States for future generations. So my good mojo is 100% for USA women's hockey, not just for winning the gold medal, but for doing it after spending the last year fighting for equal pay from their own employers for USA hockey. We saw it with U.S. women's soccer as well. Absolutely tremendous. This is what I was talking about earlier, John, why we are not good in Winter Olympics, because we don't give enough money to the youth level. Not only were these women fighting for equal pay, and they got it in a big way, $70,000 a year as opposed to $6,000 every 4, but they were fighting for the future generations, getting more funding for youth girls hockey in the USA. I absolutely love that. So good on those girls.
And here's an issue with the Olympics. Now, maybe it's just me. Had no idea about any of that until you just said it.
Exactly. That's a big problem as well. So, but good on those girls. I'm so happy.
For sure. It's wonderful.
Go to Fortune.com, read Natasha Bach's piece about it. Absolutely tremendous and well done for them.
Love it.
Well, as always, we appreciate you guys being here every single week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the cheap seats come out. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play. You can check us out on thephmedia.com as well as Spreaker.com. Check out our Facebook page as well, the Cheap Seats Sports Podcast, and interact with them with everything that we put on there. Check John and I out on Twitter, Jon Lauder, at Jon_Lauder, LAUDERJON, of course, at the very beginning of that, so we'll do it the right way, JON_LAUDER. You can find me on Twitter as well, at Chris Heimall, spell that last part, HEIMALL. On Wednesday, Jeff and Max return. Friday is Baxter and Matt. We appreciate you guys joining us all week. As always, John, a lot of fun. Thanks again
Loved
for your
it.
time, bud.
Can't wait, man. Can't wait. Do it again next Monday.
Yep, next Monday we're back here once again, as always, inside the cheap seats.